The day my heart nearly stopped, I learned the people I loved most were waiting for me to die. For decades, I poured my soul into my family, raising Greg, my adopted son, supporting Melissa after my son's death, only to hear them whisper about my house while I lay in a hospital bed. That was the moment I knew I had to fight, not just for my health, but for myself. The roses I'd tended for years wilted outside, while inside, I faced the cold truth of their greed. Could I, at 72, find a reason to live for me? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. It started in my garden, my sanctuary. The sun was pale, the air heavy with coming rain. I was pruning my roses, their thorns sharp as my thoughts, each snip a release of worries I couldn't name. Then pain struck, a fist crushing my chest. I collapsed, petals scattering, my vision blurring. The world spun, and I thought, this is it. My roses, my home fading away. I woke in the hospital, sterile white walls closing in, a pounding headache matching the monitor's beeps. My hands, frail, gripped the bed rails. I waited for Greg, my boy, or Melissa, my daughter-in-law, to hold my hand, to care. Melissa came first, her eyes sharp, calculating. "Claire," she said, her voice syrupy, "where's the paperwork for the house?" Paperwork. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I'm here." My heart sank, a stone in deep water. Greg was worse. He shuffled in, barely looking at me, his phone glowing in his hand. "This is such a hassle," he muttered, as if my life was an inconvenience. Hassle? I'd raised him, loved him like my own, given everything. His words cut deeper than the stroke, a betrayal I couldn't unhear. I lay there, alone, the beeps mocking my heartbeat. The roses outside were dying, but something in me stirred, fierce and unyielding. I wasn't done. I'd given them my life, but no more. Their whispers in that hospital room were a wake-up call. I had to know the truth about their hearts, to fight for mine. Back in my quiet home, the hospital's sterile hum still echoed in my ears. The kitchen, once alive with laughter, felt hollow, its air thick with the scent of old wood and fading memories. I sat at the worn oak table, old photos of Greg and Melissa spread before me, lit by a flickering candle. The wax's faint vanilla scent pulled me back to a life of sacrifice, each image a thread in a tapestry I'd woven for them. Why had I given so much to my adopted son and daughter-in-law, and what had it cost me? The question hung heavy, like the shadows dancing on the walls. Greg came to me as a boy, 6 years old, his eyes wide with fear, clutching a tattered teddy bear. My husband and I adopted him, vowing to be his safe harbor. Money was tight, nights spent sewing patches on his jeans to save a dime, dinners of thin soup stretched to feed us all. But his smile, oh, it was worth every sacrifice. I'd tuck him in, reading tales of knights and dragons, believing I was raising a hero. One night, he gave me a handmade card scribbled with "I love you, Mom" in crooked crayon. I pressed it to my chest, tears falling, thinking, this is enough. That card, now yellowed, lay among the photos, a reminder of a bond I thought unbreakable. But as Greg grew, that bond frayed. He became distant, his teenage years a storm of slammed doors and eye rolls. I'd work double shifts at the diner, my hands raw from scrubbing counters, to keep him in school. Yet he'd snap, "I'm fine, Mom," when I asked about his day, his hugs replaced by shrugs. I blamed myself, thinking I'd failed him somehow. One evening, he asked for money for school supplies, his eyes avoiding mine. I gave it, my savings shrinking, only to see new sneakers on his feet days later. My heart sank, but I pushed the doubt away, clinging to that crayon-scribbled card, telling myself he'd come back to me. Then there was Melissa. My biological son, her husband, died too young, his car accident shattering us both. At his funeral, her tears soaked my shoulder, and I promised, "I'll take care of you." So I did. I paid her rent when she lost her job, filled her fridge when it was empty. My savings, meant for a dream trip to Italy, cobblestone streets, warm espresso, dwindled to nothing. But her smile, bright and grateful, kept me going. "You're a saint, Claire," she'd say, her voice sweet as honey. I believed her, needed her to need me. But cracks appeared. One afternoon she visited, her perfume sharp, her eyes scanning my living room. "This house is so big for you alone," she said, her tone casual but probing. "Ever think of selling?" I froze, my tea cooling in my hands. Selling? This was my home, my garden, my life. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and I felt a chill, like a door left open in winter. She laughed it off, but the question lingered, a seed of doubt. Her visits grew shorter, her requests bolder. "Can you cover my car payment, Claire? Just this once?" Just this once became every month, her gratitude thinning like worn fabric. I traced a finger over Greg's photo, his boyish grin frozen in time. I remembered his graduation, how I'd clapped until my hands stung, proud as any mother. But he barely thanked me, already talking about moving out, his future, never ours. Melissa's photo stared back, her smile a mask I hadn't seen through. I'd given them everything, my youth, my dreams, my heart. But what had I lost? The trips I'd never take, the nights I'd spent alone, the pieces of myself I'd buried to lift them up. I'd wanted to be their rock, but had I built my own cage? The house felt like a stranger, its silence hiding secrets I wasn't ready to face. Back from the hospital, my body was weak, but my mind raced, replaying Greg's annoyance, Melissa's sharp questions about my house. They were thorns in my thoughts, pricking deeper each day. Something was wrong, beyond the stroke, beyond their cold words in that sterile room. How far would they go to secure my inheritance? I needed the truth, and I needed it now. It began with a small accident. In my bedroom, fumbling with my pill bottle, I dropped it, the cap skittering under the dresser. I knelt, my joints protesting, and reached into the dusty shadows. My fingers brushed a plastic bag, small and out of place. I pulled it out, my breath catching. Inside were my pills, the ones meant to keep my heart steady, but I'd been taking them, hadn't I? I stared at the half-empty bottle in my hand, my pulse hammering. Why were these hidden? The question burned, a spark in the dark. I sat on the bed, the room dim, shadows stretching like doubts across the walls. My mind spiraled, piecing together fragments. The past weeks had been a blur of missed appointments. Greg had said the doctor was too busy. Meals arrived late or not at all, Melissa promising she'd handle it. I'd trusted them, blamed my foggy mind for the gaps. But now, holding those hidden pills, their faces shifted in my memory. Greg's careless shrugs, Melissa's too sweet smiles. They weren't mistakes. Were they deliberate? The thought was a knife twisting in my chest. I started searching, my hands trembling but driven. In the kitchen, I found an old appointment log tucked in a drawer, its pages marked with cancellations I hadn't made. "Patient declined," one note read, in handwriting I didn't recognize. My stomach churned. I pictured Melissa's neat cursive, Greg's hasty scrawl. Had they forged this? I sank into a chair, the log heavy in my lap, the house's silence oppressive. I'd raised Greg, loved him like my own. I'd held Melissa through her grief. How could they betray me like this? Greg came by the next day, his boots loud on the creaky floorboards. "You look fine, Mom," he said, his eyes on his phone, not me. I gripped the table, my voice sharp. "Why were my appointments canceled?" He sighed, rolling his eyes, a gesture that cut deeper than words. "It's not a big deal. You're overthinking." Overthinking? Anger flared, hot and unfamiliar. I wanted to shake him, to demand answers, but he was already leaving, muttering about work, the door slamming behind him. Melissa was worse. She arrived that evening, her heels clicking, her perfume sharp as a warning. "Claire, you're doing so well," she said, her smile rehearsed, her eyes darting around the room. I held up the pill bag, watching her closely. "What's this?" Her face froze, just a flicker, before she laughed, high and brittle. "Oh, those must have fallen. You know how clumsy I am." "Clumsy?" My hands clenched, nails digging into my palms. She pivoted, her voice bright but strained. "Have you thought about a nursing home? It'd be easier for you." Easier for me? Or for them? The words hung, heavy as the storm brewing outside. I saw it clearly now. A nursing home, my house, my garden, my life, gone. Melissa's questions in the hospital, her hand lingering near my desk, they weren't concern. They were calculation. Greg's dismissals weren't laziness. They were strategy. They wanted me out, my home theirs. The realization was a fire, burning away my doubts. I wasn't just a burden to them, I was a prize, and they'd played me for years. Helen, my neighbor, came the next morning, her arms full of steaming soup, her eyes kind but sharp. We sat in the kitchen, the air warm with broth and candlelight. "You're not yourself, Claire," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "This isn't just the stroke." I hesitated, the weight of my suspicions crushing, but her gaze, steady and knowing, broke my silence. "I think they're hiding something," I whispered, showing her the pills. Helen's lips tightened. "I've seen Melissa's car here too often, always when you're not looking, and Greg, he's never cared for anyone but himself." Her words were a mirror reflecting my fears. "Get help, Claire," she urged. "A caregiver, someone you can trust." I nodded, a spark of resolve igniting, warming the cold corners of my heart. That night, I clutched the hidden pills, anger rising like a tide. The house creaked, its shadows no longer threats but allies. I wasn't their pawn. I'd uncover their game no matter how dark. This story took heart to tell, so if it's hitting you, subscribe. It means the world to us. And what would you do if you found out someone hid your medicine? Share in the comments. The garden felt alive again, each petal a promise of something new. The hidden pills had cracked my world open, suspicion poisoning every memory of Greg and Melissa. I was adrift, my trust shattered, but a light flickered in the darkness. Sophie, my new ally. Could she help me reclaim my independence and uncover the full truth? I stood in my kitchen, the weight of doubt heavy, but her arrival sparked a hope I hadn't dared to feel. Helen's words had lingered. "Get help, Claire." So I called the agency she recommended, my voice shaky but resolute. The next day, Sophie arrived, a young nursing student, barely 22, with warm brown eyes and a smile like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I'm here to make your days easier," she said, her voice steady, kind. I studied her, my heart guarded after all I'd endured, but her gaze held no pretense, only a quiet strength that eased the knot in my chest. I nodded, letting her step into my fractured world. We sat in the kitchen, sunlight spilling through the window, dust motes dancing in the air. Sophie asked about my routine, medications, meals, my garden, with a care that felt genuine, not clinical. I spoke of my roses, how they'd been my refuge through loss and betrayal. She listened, her hands folded, her nod encouraging. "My grandma loved her garden too," she said, her eyes distant. She'd sit among her lilies telling me stories. When she got sick, I promised I'd care for others like her. Her words, soft but earnest, bridged the gap between us. I felt seen, not as a patient, but as Claire. Sophie brought warmth to my days. She sorted my pills, her fingers quick and careful, ensuring I never missed a dose. She cooked hearty soups, the kitchen filling with the scent of herbs and comfort. We'd walk to the garden, her arm steady under mine, the roses blooming despite neglect, red, pink, defiant. One afternoon, pruning a bush, I let my guard down. "I think my family's hiding something," I said, my voice low, the words heavy. I told her about the pills, Greg's dismissals, Melissa's push for a nursing home. Sophie's eyes narrowed, not with pity, but resolve. "That's not right, Claire," she said. "We'll figure this out. You're not alone." Not alone. The words wrapped around me, a lifeline in the storm. But Melissa sensed the shift. She came by one evening, her heels clicking sharply on the porch, her smile tight as a drawn bow. "Who's this?" she asked, eyeing Sophie, her voice syrupy but edged. Sophie stood tall, unfazed. "I'm Claire's caregiver," she said, her tone calm but firm. Melissa's laugh was forced, her eyes flicking to the desk where my papers lay. "Caregiver? Claire, you don't need that, I'm here." Her hand brushed a folder, a casual move that wasn't casual at all. My stomach twisted, memories of her hospital questions flashing back. "Sophie stays," I said, my voice steadier than my heart. Melissa's gaze hardened, but she nodded. "Whatever you want," she said, leaving quickly, her perfume lingering like a threat. In the garden with Sophie, I felt stronger. We pruned roses, her hands gentle, mine finding rhythm. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting golden patterns on the grass. Doubt still lingered, a shadow of Greg's betrayal, Melissa's greed, but Sophie's presence was a balm. She shared more stories, of her dreams to be a nurse, her fears of failing. I saw myself in her, the woman I might have been without so many sacrifices. Hope grew, cautious but real, rooting itself in my heart. The room crackled with tension, each word a step toward my freedom. Sophie had become my anchor, her strength fueling my resolve. The hidden pills, the forged notes. They were proof of Greg and Melissa's betrayal, a scheme to strip me of my home. Now, in my living room, I was ready to confront them, to reclaim my life. Would this moment expose their lies and secure my freedom? My heart pounded, not with fear, but with a fire I'd thought long extinguished. Sophie uncovered the truth methodically. One morning she sat at my kitchen table, medical records spread out, her brow furrowed. "These pills aren't right," she said, holding one to the light, powdery, too light. She cross-checked my chart, her fingers tracing dates. "Your appointments were canceled," she said, her voice tight. "Not by you." She found a forged note in the clinic's file, claiming I'd refused care, the handwriting sharp, like Melissa's. Then, in Melissa's old handbag, left in my guest room, Sophie found a crumpled paper. "Dilute the meds," it read in Melissa's cursive. "She'll seem confused, nursing home by spring." I clutched the note, its words a blade through my heart. Diluted my meds? They'd planned to make me seem frail, to justify stealing my home. I saw their faces, Melissa's fake tears in the hospital, Greg's careless shrugs in my kitchen, and rage surged, hot and raw. My hands trembled, not from weakness, but from their deceit. I thought of the years I'd given them, my savings, my love, now twisted into this. Sophie's hand on my shoulder steadied me. "We have proof," she said, her eyes fierce. "Let's end this." We planned with care. I called Greg and Melissa, my voice calm, masking the storm within. They arrived that evening, the sky bruised with clouds, rain tapping the windows. Melissa swept in, her perfume sharp, her smile too wide. "Claire, you look tired," she said, her eyes scanning the room, already claiming it. Greg slouched on the couch, scrolling his phone, his boots scuffing my rug. I stood tall, Sophie by my side, the note and pill bottle in my pocket. The air was heavy, like the moment before lightning. I began softly, my voice steady. "I found something," I said, holding up the pills. Melissa's smile flickered, her fingers tightening on her purse. "And this." I revealed the note, her handwriting stark. The room fell silent, the rain's rhythm the only sound. Greg's phone slipped, his face pale. Melissa laughed, high and brittle. "That's nothing, Claire. You're confused." Confused? I stepped forward, my eyes locked on hers. "You diluted my meds. You forged notes. You wanted me in a nursing home. My house, yours." Melissa's face twisted, her sweetness crumbling. "You're being paranoid," she snapped, her voice sharp. "You're old, Claire. You need care we can't give." Her words were a slap, but I didn't flinch. "Care?" I said, my voice cutting. "You starved me of it." Greg shifted, his eyes darting. "Mom, calm down," he muttered, but his voice shook. I pressed on, relentless. "You planned this together, admit it." Melissa's eyes flashed, her hands shaking. "You're twisting everything," she cried, but her voice cracked. Greg broke, his shoulders slumping. "It was her idea," he blurted, pointing at Melissa. "She said it'd be quick, that you'd fade." The storm roared outside, but I was calm, powerful. "This is my home," I said, my voice ringing, "and you're no longer welcome." I pointed to the door, my hand steady. Melissa's lips parted, her eyes wide, but no words came. Greg grabbed his jacket, cursing under his breath, and they left, the door slamming. I stood, the room mine again, the air clean despite the rain. Sophie squeezed my hand, her eyes proud. I'd won, but the victory was bittersweet. I thought of Greg's boyish smile, Melissa's tears at my son's funeral, moments I'd cherished, now tainted. The thunder faded, leaving a heavy quiet. I'd reclaimed my home, but the cost was a family I'd loved. Could I rebuild from here? If you're cheering for my stand, smash that like button. What do you think of this moment of justice? Let me know in the comments. The room glowed with color, each stroke a piece of my heart coming alive. The confrontation had freed my home, but Greg and Melissa's betrayal left scars, like thorns embedded in my soul. With Sophie's help, I was rebuilding, learning to live for myself. Could I find happiness and purpose in a life I chose? I stood at the edge of something new, my heart hesitant but reaching for joy. Sophie saw my longing, the way my eyes lingered on the garden, searching for meaning. One morning, over oatmeal in the kitchen, she slid a flyer across the table. "An art group," she said, her smile bright. "You love your roses, Claire. Paint them." Paint? I hadn't touched a brush since childhood, my dreams of art buried under years of sacrifice. Doubt crept in, cold and familiar. What if I was too old, too broken? But Sophie's faith was a spark. "You've got this," she said, squeezing my hand. I nodded, the flyer's edges soft under my fingers, a small promise. The community center was warm, sunlight streaming through tall windows, canvases lining the walls. A table held roses in glass vases, their petals vibrant, red, pink, white against the white cloth. I hesitated at the door, my cane heavy, the chatter of strangers daunting. Helen waved me over, her grin wide. "Claire, you're here," she said, pulling out a chair. The group, mostly seniors, welcomed me with warm nods. I sat, my heart thudding, but the scent of paint and roses calmed me, like a memory of my garden in bloom. The instructor, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes, handed me a brush. "Just start," she said. I dipped it in red, the color of my rose's heart, and let it glide across the canvas. Each stroke was a release, a reclaiming of something lost. I painted a rose, its petals curling, thorns sharp but beautiful. The room faded, and it was just me, the paint, and my garden spirit. When I finished, the group gathered, their praise soft but genuine. "It's alive," Helen said, touching the canvas. "Like you." I blushed, pride swelling, a feeling I'd forgotten. Helen became a friend, her stories of her late husband weaving into mine as we painted. The group shared laughter, coffee, moments of quiet understanding. Margaret, another member, spoke of losing her son, her voice steady, and I nodded, our losses a silent bond. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen, not as a mother or widow, but as Claire. Sophie joined us sometimes, her pride a quiet glow. She kept my health steady, meds on time, garden walks, her care a rhythm in my new life. But doubt lingered, a shadow whispering, could this happiness last? Then came Melissa's letter, left on my porch, her handwriting shaky. "I'm sorry, Claire," it read. "I was wrong." I sat in the garden, the paper trembling, roses swaying in the breeze. Part of me wanted to forgive, to believe she'd changed. But another part, hardened by betrayal, saw her hospital eyes, greedy and cold. Forgiveness was a risk, a door I wasn't ready to open. I tucked the letter away, the choice heavy but mine. This life, this garden, was for me now. What lesson did you take from my journey? Share it in the comments. If this story inspired you, share it with a friend who needs it. My garden was alive again, each rose a testament to my strength. The battle with Greg and Melissa was over, their betrayal a fading scar. With Sophie's help, I'd rebuilt a life that was mine, full of color, friends, and purpose. Now, standing among my roses, I wondered, had I truly found a life worth living for myself? And what did it mean for my future? This moment, this garden party, would seal my journey, but one last choice lay ahead. The garden glowed under golden sunlight, roses blooming in every corner, red, pink, white, their petals soft as promises. I'd spent the morning arranging tables, draping them with white cloths, setting out vases of my own roses. My hands, once trembling, moved with purpose, clipping stems, smoothing napkins. Sophie bustled beside me, her laughter bright as she hung fairy lights in the trees. "This is going to be beautiful, Claire," she said, her eyes sparkling. I smiled, my heart full, but a quiet ache lingered. What would this day mean for the family I'd lost? The guests arrived as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the grass. Helen was first, her arms full of homemade scones, her grin wide. "Look at this place," she exclaimed, hugging me tightly. My art group followed, their voices warm, their canvases tucked under their arms. We'd planned a small exhibition, my rose-themed paintings propped on easels among the flowers. I stood by one, its petals bold and thorny, and felt a rush of pride. This was me, Claire, not just a mother or widow, but a woman who created beauty from pain. We laughed, clinked glasses of lemonade, shared stories under the twinkling lights. Helen told of her first painting, a crooked sunflower that made us chuckle. Another friend, Margaret, spoke of losing her husband, her voice soft but steady, and I nodded, understanding. These people saw me, not my past, not my losses. I glanced at Sophie, who was refilling a pitcher, her smile proud. She'd kept me strong, meds on time, walks in the garden, encouragement when doubt crept in. I'd been broken, but here, surrounded by roses and friends, I felt whole. Then I found the note, slipped into my mailbox that morning. Melissa's handwriting, unsteady. "Claire, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Maybe one day we can talk." I sat on a garden bench, the paper crinkling in my hands, the party's hum distant. Her words stirred something. Regret, maybe hope, but trust was a fragile thing. I thought of her in the hospital, her eyes on my house, not me. Forgiveness wasn't easy, not yet. I folded the note, tucking it into my pocket. I'd decide later, when my heart was ready. For now, this moment was mine. I stood, joining the group, my cane light in my hand. We toasted to new beginnings, the glasses catching the sunset's glow. I looked at my paintings, each rose a piece of my rebirth. Self-love, I realized, wasn't selfish. It was my foundation, my strength. I'd spent decades giving, but now I knew. I deserved to live for me. The garden, my sanctuary, held no shadows tonight. It was alive, like me, rooted in resilience. Don't miss more stories like mine. Hit that subscribe button now. If my story moved you, share it with someone who'd love it. Up next, 2 more standout stories are on your screen. If this one hit the mark, don't miss them. Click now.